Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from California, we have Cehn. Michelle is the founder and CEO of World of Vegan, co-host of the Plant Powered People podcast, co-author of the Friendly Vegan Cookbook, and creative spirit behind @Vegan on Instagram, where she's built a plant-passionate community over 1 million strong. She's also a mama with a mission to create a better future for our world. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. I'd love to start by finding out how and why you transitioned to a plant-based diet.
I've actually been vegetarian since I was 8 years old. I've always had a really strong sensitivity to suffering, I guess I would say. So when I realized that meat came from animals and what all went into creating meat, I took that off my plate. So I was quite young. I didn't know any other vegetarians around me, despite living in California, for a big portion of my life. And then it wasn't until college when I picked up a book from a philosopher, Peter Singer, and I read it cover to cover, and it really documented what happened not only in the meat industry, but also the dairy industry and the egg industries. And I just had no idea that the reality is that those are almost worse in terms of treatment of animals and all of the wild, horrific things that go on in those industries than, just the act of slaughter that goes into creating meat. So reading that book, by the time I closed it, I was like, well, I'm vegan now. And actually, it more felt like I've always been vegan. Like, this is a word that describes me. It's I try and act in a way that's, kind. I never want to cause harm to others. That's just like a part of who I am. And so I just felt like, okay, I am vegan. Now I just have to get there practically to removing these things that I realized were very much not in alignment with the effect that I wanted to cause on the world. So yeah, I think it took maybe a month of transition. I was in college and then I became fully vegan.
Now, when you were 8 years old and you told your parents that you didn't want to eat that meat stuff anymore, how did they react?
They were surprisingly supportive. I've also babysat quite a lot, and it's something that a lot of kids actually go through is they are like, oh, meat comes from animals. I don't want to eat this. And I hear from a lot of kids that their parents are just like, no, this is a decision you can make when you're a grown up. So partially, I think I'm very headstrong and my parents know that. Like, if they say no, I'm still not going to, I'll just go on a starvation, like I'm not eating streak. So they were like, okay, but you can make pasta over here while we're eating our food. And they kind of let me do my thing on that front, which I'm so grateful for. Okay, they never really pushed back. And eventually down the line, like my mom's now mostly vegan. My dad enjoys vegan food. So it's been cool to see that evolve as well.
Being a mother, what did you learn from that experience?
That's a really good question. I mean, I really hold on to what I appreciated in the ways that my parents reacted to a decision of mine that's different from, like, it's going to impact their everyday life. Every time we sit down to dinner, I'm no longer eating the food that they're making or all of it. And yet they let me choose my path without showing much judgment. And I think that is something that does actually take a practice in your own mind to allow your children to choose something different than what you're choosing, and to be as supportive as possible for them on that. So that's definitely something that I hope to integrate into my parenting is just an open, non-judgmental space for my kid to, explore. And especially if he feels passionately about something. My little one's just 3 years old right now, but when he feels passionately about something, to really listen, to allow him to teach me, and to be supportive of the things that are important to him, the way that my parents were to me.
Now, when you were in college and you became fully vegan, Did you notice any changes at all in your mental or physical self?
It's interesting because when I went vegan, I did it for ethical reasons. And at the time, I had all of these like preconceived notions and myths in my mind about protein. Where am I going to get my protein? I just really did believe, like, based on what society had written,
Mm-hmm.
that this would be a less healthy choice for me. I thought I would be sacrificing my own health by removing my participation in, animal agriculture. And I really quickly learned that it was quite the opposite. I read books like Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease and the China Study and all these books that doctors have written about how plant-based food can actually, not can, but does actually improve your health, reduce your risk of many diseases. So I was in college. I had never faced like big struggles with health. It was not like the first thing on my mind. So that enabled me to step into this vegan lifestyle that I thought would be less healthy, but I quickly found it was far, far more healthy. I also thought that it would be a really constricting and limiting diet and that it would be really hard. But I quickly learned that it was actually really expansive. My diet expanded like 1,000-fold. I used to eat pasta with Parmesan cheese, cereal with milk. Like my diet was so bland. It was colorless. It really was. The veggies were limited to like broccoli, and like I had like a few things that I liked. But when I went vegan, like my plate just turned into this colorful forest of so many different foods and plants that I hadn't eaten before. And while my mission was not feel better or be healthy myself, it was like the opposite. I was thinking externally about how I could help the world, and what a incredible gift that I got back to see that by trying to help others, I by default accidentally ended up helping myself too. And I felt great. I mean, I barely noticed how good I felt, because you almost don't notice when you're transitioning out of feeling less good to feeling really good. But I was energetic. I was like started running marathons. I was full of life and energy. And I don't know how much of that can be attributed to the food that I was eating, but I do know I expected it to be slowing me down, and instead it just sped me up and was such a gift.
What have you struggled with most since you've become vegan?
I would say in the beginning, so I went vegan when I was in college, and I was in college in Cleveland, Ohio, and this was like 15 years ago. So it was before vegan was like throughout the grocery stores and integrated into college dining halls and all of that. So when I went vegan, I did have to like figure out, well, what can I eat now? What is in the dining halls that I can turn into a meal? It was a completely new territory. I kind of liken it to learning how to ride a bike, where at first you get on the bike and you're like, I'm just going to fall down. I'm going to fall down. I'm going to fall down. How am I supposed to stay up when there's just two wheels? Like as a child, you're just like baffled that that could actually happen. And then once you start riding, like you're going up hills, downhill, speeding down, you're like, how could I ever have not been able to do that? Like that's exactly how it feels. You just don't know how to do it yet. And so it feels like new territory. But I luckily in even in Cleveland, Ohio, there was some community around me that organized vegan events, and they'd have like these library screenings where they'd have all this food for dinner. And so I got an example around me of like what you can eat. And it sort of helped normalize the idea of being a plant-based eater, that people can do it. Had been doing it for many years. They were thriving. And so it helped shift my mind from like, is this possible? What the heck do I eat? To, oh my gosh, this is totally possible. Now I just get to like learn and discover. And my brain shifted into this really fun territory and zone where it's just like every time you go to the grocery store, what new things can you find, or what new products are coming out, or like recipe can I make that I've never had before, and how's it going to turn out? It was just an area of discovery, which was really, really fun.
Take us back to reading Peter Singer's book, okay? First of all, how did you pick it up? And then second of all, take us back to the moment where you closed that book and what you were feeling.
So how I picked up that book, I loved going to used bookstores. And it's actually interesting because I would rarely buy books at used bookstores, but I loved my friend and I would just go in them and look and kind of like pick up some books and read them in there. And I found this tattered it's a skinny little book. And I went to like I don't know if it was animals and environment section or something like that. And I'm a huge animal lover and I love learning about like the planet. I was a biology major. So I see this tiny little tattered book that's old. It was written in the 70s. And I pulled it out and it's called Animal Liberation, which is a title that I wish it had a different title because I think it's a huge turnoff to people. But it piqued my curiosity because I was animal passionate. And yeah, I picked it up and I read it in like a couple days, and it just completely revolutionized how my brain was working about everything. Like, it's so cool because I had kind of uncovered what's happening in order to create meat just on my own. It was never presented. There was never like a book about it. I just was like, okay, to get from animal onto plate, you piece together how that happens and you know it's not pretty. But the way Peter Singer put this book together was really speaking about ethics. Like, he's a bioethics professor at Princeton University, and he put together these cases of like, to be an ethical human being, how can we participate in these things that are directly causing harm? How he worded it just like completely made so much sense in my brain. And then, yeah, I mean, it was almost like every page of that book, it was just clicking in my mind. It's like something had been not aligned for so long and I just had no idea about it. Like, I thought I was doing everything I could to be kind to animals, to our planet, to people. And so learning things where you realize, whoa, I was way off base here, was like fascinating and sad, but also exciting because such a simple shit, there's like an answer there. Oh, I can just shift how I'm eating and remove supporting these industries that are terrible by any standard. I mean, you can ask anyone, and even if they are diehard meat lovers, like they still will say, oh yeah, the meat industry is terrible. The dairy industry is pretty terrible. So I felt like almost invigorated and excited to finally have an action I could take, an alignment that I could make in my own life that would make a difference.
How did it feel to have your actions aligned with your values?
Strange, because they always have been. Like, I've always felt like my actions were aligned with my values. And I think that's a lot of people who are vegetarian and then go vegan. It's this like moment where you're like, whoa, I thought they had been, but they hadn't. And it's helpful to have those experiences because it's a reminder that none of us know everything. Like, we think we're doing what's right. We all think we're doing what's best. But this book presented to me that everything you thought you knew was like 1/billionth of the actual picture. And so you've just spent 16 years, 17 years of your life thinking that you're doing the best that you can be doing. And like all those years, like, I started animal rights clubs in high school and in college, and I'm like raising money to donate to World Wildlife Fund or whatever. Like, I was on a mission to make a difference. And this made me realize I'm kind of treading water backwards. Like I'm dedicating my life to something and not actually making the difference. I'm making the counter difference. And so it just became like a new goal of mine to not just be doing something that I thought was good, but to figure out how to actually be effective, which involves a lot of learning and a lot of just like whatever you think is right is often not right. Unlearning, like trying a lot of different things and seeing what's actually impactful versus just what you think is going to be impactful. I don't know. That book opened up a lot in me, and it was like, it's such a short, quick read. I remember it was like summertime. I was reading outside in the sunshine on the lawn in front of my parents' house. And like my brain was just on fire with all the things that I wanted to change, that I wanted to do, and just like a kind of shifting of understanding of how life works almost.
Now, did you have any thoughts or, I guess, regrets about the information that you were receiving and your actions previous? even though you thought you were doing, obviously we always think we're doing the right thing, and then kind of having your eyes opened to this other world. What was your reaction to that?
I felt like I think most people feel, and I know because I also asked people this question on the Plant Powered People podcast, and so many people who are vegan say, my only wish is that I had known sooner, or I had
Mm-hmm.
made the change sooner. But whether it's for health, whether it's for environment, for animals, ethics, human rights, whatever the issue, like whatever you care about, you just wish you had known sooner because it's so simple and it's so delicious, and it's not really a sacrifice at all once you learn how to do it. So it's just like, yeah, I wish I had known sooner. But I mean, I'm also very practical, and I know you only know what you know. So all I
Mm.
can do is take this information that I now have, and what am I going to do with that going forward? And it did make me feel like when I was a vegetarian and I knew animals were being slaughtered to get to your plate, but I thought, I'm choosing to be vegetarian because I love animals. No one else really cares that much about animals to make a difference. So I wasn't like, I would do things to try and help and make a difference, but I never had in my head, like, if I just explained to people that animals are being slaughtered, they'll stop eating them. That wasn't in my head. I just didn't think that would happen. But when
Mm-hmm.
I read that book, I thought, holy cow, if people knew what was happening, nobody could read this book and then go and continue eating the way they'd been eating. So it really opened my eyes to like, all of this is happening behind closed doors. No one knows what's actually going on. That it's so awful and so terrible in so many different respects that like, if anyone knew this information, massive change would happen across our society. So at that point, I became more of a like proactive advocate for plant-based eating, because I just thought this would align with so many people's existing values. It's not that
Mm.
you have to move or change their set of values. Like this already aligns. Like this is where most people already are. I honestly believe most people are vegan. They just don't have all the information there. And that's the tricky part, but that's also sort of like where I shifted as like my mission in life was, okay, I think I can do the most good by just helping people see what's going on, like sharing information. And if people had the information, they make their own choices. But if you give people information, people make good choices. People are really good. People are really good. They want to do good. Yeah. So it shifted a lot in that regard too.
How can we change people's cognitive dissonance?
Huh. That's a good question. Cognitive dissonance is a interesting evolutionary adaptation of our brains, and it's very effective. So like the separation in our brains from things that are painful to see or things that are going to be disruptive to our lives, or for whatever reason it's easier for us to not make the connection. Our brains will work very hard to not to like keep that wall up between our actions and then the result on the other side. And I mean, honestly, what I found through my many years of advocacy, I don't work on breaking through cognitive dissonance. I used to. I
Mm-hmm.
used to say, can't you see? Like, this is going on. Why don't you care? But it really depleted me. And it doesn't feel good on either side. It doesn't feel good to be telling someone they're not doing something right. And it really doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of that for someone casting judgment about your ethics. So
Mm.
I've just shifted to, I want to put information out there, lead by positive example, share delicious food and recipes. And I've actually seen far more impact and change come from that, where people are able to find the information on their own, receive it in their own time. And if you're just reading an article that you found online, you're not in defense mode because there's not someone watching how you're reacting to it. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a conversation or like, I mean, I've done like protests, I've done demonstrations, I've done like vegan outreach leafleting, I've done volunteering for organizations, I worked at a nonprofit, like I've done so many different forms of advocacy before landing where I'm at now. And it really did feel like while you're disseminating more information in some of these ways directly to people where they have to confront it, very rarely does the change happen directly when someone's confronted with doing something wrong. So I won't say very rarely. I think documentaries are super impactful because they hit with all the information, but not in a judgmental way. Like people are still receiving that at a point when they choose to watch it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just shifted my perspective on effective advocacy based on my experience.
So how can we change the world? Is it the soft change that you just described?
For me, that's the path I've chosen. But again, there's not one right way to change the world. I think you do what feels right for you, but the key is if you feel like something's off balance in the world or something's not right in the world that doesn't sit well in your heart, to do something. And that's something like to do something every day, like even if it's just a little thing every day. And that might change over time. And again, like, just like I don't beat myself up when I went vegan for not being vegan before then, like I don't beat myself up now for doing types of advocacy that I now I'm like, was that actually effective? Like, I didn't know. I was just trying what I could and seeing what worked. So like, if you want to make a difference in the world, try a bunch of things and see what leads to a result that you feel like, wow, that's actually making a difference.
Now, your website, World of Vegan, is such a great resource. I mean, everything from how to go vegan to great recipes. It's just amazing. I was on it the other day and I was like, oh, let's see. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? Maybe I'll have some Thai yellow curry or whatever it was.
Oh, yay.
How did you create it and what was your thought process behind it?
I started creating content in college soon after going vegan. It's a long story, but I started making YouTube videos. Ultimately, I wanted to be a resource for people because one of the struggles for me is I knew I had a little bit of community around me. And when you try and do something different from everybody else and you have nobody, it's really, really hard. And I knew a lot of people in different pockets of the world were like that. They had no one around them that was trying to eat vegan or whatever, cared about the world or the planet or whatever. So I wanted to be a resource for those people. So I started a YouTube channel in those early days and made really wildly terrible YouTube videos. But they did connect with people because there was not a lot of community online at that point. And so from there, it was like, that was like the one thing, you know, how it's like, how are you going to make a difference? And I think in my brain, how am I going to make a difference? Well, here's a little thing I can do. Here's a little thing I could do. And I did a bunch of them. And every day I would do some little tiny action on a thing. And those YouTube videos over the decade and a half led to where World of Vegan is now. Like I never was in a point where I was like, I'm going to start something that's going to be my career and my business and my income and is going to be my advocacy and it's going to have a team and it's going to help the world globally. Like none of that was in my mind. I was just trying to think of how I, as one person, could use whatever strengths were in me to help other people. And now it's so like there's so many avenues that you can do that. You can do that through your profession. Are you a writer? Are you a photographer? Can you donate your time to a nonprofit? Do you want to make videos? Do you make recipes? Do you share them online? There's a million social media outlets. Like there's so many ways you can tap in that now to make a difference. And then just always like it's just figuring out what you love to do and what you're already doing and seeing how you can use your skill set and apply that to be helpful to people.
I think that's such a great idea, is that to do just one thing every day. If you can just do one thing, it's the way to change your life, the way to change your advocacy or whatever, because what happens is that you're just doing one thing and have you gotten better that day? And that's all. And then after the years and after, like you said, the YouTube videos, do you have regrets of the YouTube videos? Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I have taken some down. It's more embarrassment than regrets. Like I'm glad they were out there, but now I'm just,
Well,
but no regrets.
I'm just kidding. But like you do one thing every day, and what happens is that when you turn around and you look back, you've done a lot. That's what I look at with your work, is that you started as a college kid, and now 15 years later, you have
I'm
this
35 now. Yeah.
you have this huge book of work, and it's World of Vegan. And it is changing people. It's making it easier for people to find dinners. It's making it easier for people to go there and be like, oh, I need a resource so that I can figure out why to go vegan, or even like a meatless Monday meal. And that's what's beautiful about it. I absolutely love it. I think it's such a great concept, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing.
Thank you. It's interesting. I think what most people say is, well, I'm just so busy, which girl, I know. Me too. But the other interesting thing to think about is, okay, do you sit down at the end of the day and watch something on Netflix? For most people are spending at least a couple hours doing that every day. If you take 1 hour of your Netflix time, or just 1 hour that you carve out a day, could be your lunch break, whatever it is, 1 hour a day, every day for a year, that's 45 full 8-hour work days per year. That's like 2 months of full work from 1 hour a day that you can dedicate to whatever it is you want. That's wild. And the crazy thing is, like, for me, it started in like, okay, what pockets of time do I have outside of my classes, outside of my job, outside of whatever? And you're just like making use of that time. But like, imagine if you did 2 hours a day. Fuck, that's what, 90? That's 90 days a year of full work days. Like, it's just, it's really wild what you can do by taking pockets of time and applying them well. And it is, I don't want to say addictive, although it can be, because helping and the feel good that comes from helping really is almost like you want to do more of it, but it becomes not something that you have to carve out, but that you're like excited to jump to. For me, it's going to my computer because most of my stuff happens on my computer. But whatever it is for you, like, I'm so excited to have the pocket of time where I get to run and be productive for helping the world. It's what I am excited to do when I wake up in the morning. And like, for me, I've done that for so long in all of the pockets of time I had, like the curricular time outside of school and work, that it set up a space for me to make, now that's my whole job. Like, now this is part of my job. Now I wake up in the morning and I'm so excited to go to work saying, how do I help the world? And that's possible too, but it's not. I think a lot of people think like, to make a big difference, like you have to quit your job, but then learn how to start a nonprofit and then get funding, and then it gets too overwhelming to even start. That's not where it starts. It starts from simple little things that you can do today that you just do, and then that grows.
No, I agree. I think paralysis is one of the biggest things holding people back, that they overthink things, and they're like, oh my God, I can't do that because I got to do this, and this. But if you just start with one thing, then you're taking that step, and then eventually you'll get to wherever it is you need to get to. Now, how do you find the time with a toddler to create all the content and do all the things that you do?
I don't. And honestly, it's really hard. Being a working parent in general, being a working mom is rough. Like, I definitely started therapy. That's really helpful. Like, mental health, it's just hard. But for me, it's been, my default answer to anything is no. Like, no, I can't do this thing that I want to do. Times a million. There's a million things I have to say no to that I wouldn't have had to say no to before becoming a parent. But I say no so that I can choose what I say yes to. And if something's going to take my time, I have to really believe, like, for me, it's what's the impact of this? And if it's going to make an impact, and you just really have to be choosy with your time. And then, like, that also, a year or two, maybe 2 years into becoming a parent for me, because I used to do everything in World Vegan it was me, from the web to site to the photos to the recipe development to the articles to the social media to the campaigns, the video, like it was all me.
Wow.
And as a parent, I realized I was spending like there's 24 hours of a day. Somehow I was spending 40 hours a day working. Like it was just all my life was work. And so becoming a parent, you lose a lot of those hours. And to make a big impact, I just had to change how I looked at things. I started a lot of coaching. I started business coaching. I started therapy. I started like other types of personal coaching. And it helped me visualize how to create a team, and how to get to a point where I didn't feel constantly underwater. And I felt like I feel like I'm almost there, still working on it. But you just realize like, okay, you can't do this all yourself. You need to outsource. You need to have a team if you want to keep doing the same things that you were before. And then, yeah, just being like, you have to let go of FOMO. You just won't be there for a lot of the things. And that's okay, because you have this other beautiful thing in your life that you're focused on as well. So, yeah, the people who say, yeah, you can do it all, I would love to see proof of that. I have not found that in my own life. Yeah.
Yeah, neither have I. So basically, setting boundaries is kind of the key for you.
Yeah. And like, it's a huge key, especially if you really love your work, because it's easy to take any moment that you can and put it toward that. But you also have a relationship, you have a child, you have family. Like, what other things are important to you in life? And for me, it actually took very formal boundaries that I would create for myself, to try and make it so that my love of my job, my work, didn't completely derail my marriage and didn't prevent me from being like the best parent that I could be. So whereas before, all of my hours were my hours to do what with I wanted, and I would apply those all to trying to make a difference. Now my work structure is very much like Graham goes to preschool. He's actually homesick today, but he goes to preschool 8 to 5. I'm working. And then like, maybe I can squeeze in another hour later in the night after I've already had time to hang out with Dan. But like, you have to change everything in terms of your boundaries in order to stay balanced. And for me, I was such a like verging on workaholic that I think I probably would have hit a period of burnout anyway without inviting a kid into my life. And so it sort of forced a balance that allowed me to give myself the experience of being a human back, which I'm really grateful for. Like, I just so appreciate that. And I wouldn't have given it to myself. Like, I needed someone else to need it from me in order for me to like allow myself to live my life and also be an advocate for animals and the world. Yeah. And I think at the end of it, I just feel so much more balanced and healthy in my relationship with life and work and how those fuse together than I have ever had before. And it feels like it's getting to a place now that is sustainable, that is like a love of work, but not a workaholism. And yeah, so it takes work to get there, but it's possible and ultimately can be a good thing all around.
What is it about veganism that makes you so passionate?
It's not the word, it's not veganism itself. I actually kind of shy away from the word veganism because it makes it sound like a religion, which vegan is just a word that describes trying to do the best you can in every situation with what you know, like trying to make the choice that doesn't cause harm, that's the least harmful on the world around you, or that creates the most joy. So it's kind of like a utilitarian perspective of leading life. So the word vegan is just kind of a word that encompasses that for me. And I know that's something that I feel passionately about, living my life in a way that doesn't cause harm, but creates the most good. But I know for most people, that's not an objective of their life. Like, most people don't go around trying to think, how can I do the least harm and the most good in my life? Which is a big part of why, like, the work that I do is not saying go vegan. It's saying, what do you care about? Think about it. And maybe eating some of these delicious foods or, choosing these products that are cruelty free or whatever, will be aligned with what you care about. And by helping people make those alignments, even in small little ways, like it changes the world in a big way. But when you put all of that together.
Where did you get the courage to start World of Vegan?
I don't think I had the courage to start it. It was always someone else who nudged me. Even starting videos, someone else encouraged me to start videos. And I thought, I guess I can, I'm terrible on camera. Like, I don't, but I just did it. I like pushed through the discomfort and did it. And then for starting World of Vegan, I had actually gotten laid off from another job. And a friend of mine came, and it was for a big vegan website. And a friend of mine saw me in a cafe, and I was looking like, where do I want to work? What like vegan company do I want to work for next? And he was like, why don't you just start your own website? And I was like, what? Who am I to start a website? Like, what? He's like, I'll invest in it. Like, you can do it. And I was like, what? Well, I don't need you to invest in it. But just those words, like planting the seed of belief in me that I didn't have in myself, allowed me to say, well, I may as well try it. And then like, it's amazing what you can do, like when you just give yourself the chance to try it. But I think that's why you see most entrepreneurs, they were either laid off or fired. Like it takes tremendous courage that I didn't have in myself to quit and start something from nothing, or to try something that is like way bigger than where you are now. Some people can do that. Like Toni Okamoto from Plant Based on a Budget. She's a vision person. She can like envision this thing that she could do and then do it. I'm like the opposite. I like set my sights really low and just kind of tumble along trying to do things, and they just kind of accidentally amplify. But no, it's like wildly impressive, I feel, when people have the courage to start things. But again, I think for me, it was just like, do what I can every day. And whether you're thinking small or thinking big, thinking global, thinking local, thinking your friend next to whatever it is, like if you keep doing those, you'll meet all these different opportunities that will pop up that can lead to something like really, really monumental.
Now, what is one thing that's really exciting for you right now, either in your life or in World of Vegan?
Well, it's been really fun growing a team. Like it's wild because doing this work on my own, just with my own brain for like 10 years plus before starting to build a team, is very exciting and empowering, but also lonely. And you only have one brain. And so with each new brain and human that enters the World of Vegan team, it's like the possibilities double, the ideas double, the like creativity doubles. And so now that we have this vibrant team, it's just there's so many new directions that we're moving in that I had never even considered. So that's really, really fun. Yeah. And then also podcasting. I just think Toni from Plant Based on a Budget convinced me to do a podcast with her many years ago. We're now on season 5. And the Plant Powered People podcast. And neither of us really expected too much from it. We just thought like whoever we do reach, like maybe we could be a helpful friend or resource for them. And now we both feel like it's some of our most impactful work. Like for someone to sit and listen to a podcast for an hour or a half hour, 20 minutes, whatever, it's a really intimate experience of feeling like you're in the room among friends talking about things that are hopefully helpful and will move you in some kind of direction. And so that's been really, really fun. And now like, yeah, we're already planning season 6 of the podcast. So that's exciting too.
Now, how hard is it to start a team and to kind of let go? It's almost like your baby, right? You have this World of Vegan and you've been working on it for 10 years, and now you got to let it go and let it go into somebody else's hands as well as your own. But still, there's that feeling, right, of can I really let go?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, I think, for most creative people. Whether it's like the level of perfectionism or just like the personal factor of like when I know everything I'm creating, I'm able to know the quality. I'm able, like, you just have full control over what you're putting out there.
Hmm.
And you really do have to learn how to like let go and release control to build a good team. To have a good team, you have to give them the ability to like take something and run with it in their own direction and to infuse their own creativity and gifts into what they're doing. And for me, I have a struggle. I struggle with like over managing and like I still struggle with that, but it's like riding a bike again. Like in the beginning, it's so hard to let go, but then you see things happen without you. Like I can go to World of Vegan today and be like, whoa, these articles went live. I cannot believe that happened without me pressing a button. Like it's so cool what can happen when you invite other people into the creative process. And I like for World of Vegan, it's exciting. I've always it hasn't been a me centric thing. Like this is World of Vegan. It's not about Michelle. Like I'm just like one piece of it. I've always tried to invite other voices and highlight other creators and make it more of a community. But it was still like small when it was just me. And so now having just more brilliant humans creating through this platform has just been really rewarding to see. Yeah. And then you start to feel as you build a team, there's eventually a point. At first, it's harder. And then you feel like, wow, I have some breathing room again. Like I have my goal for like 10 years was to have creative Fridays where I could create videos that I thought would make an impact. And it has taken me like 10 years to make that a reality. And it's only a reality now, just like over the past couple months, because I have a team. So I don't know, it's really cool and exciting, but hard to do. You need a lot of creators that I see in the space, like vegan content creators. We all go through the same thing. We're all doing everything ourselves because you have to, you don't have a budget. There's no budget initially. But then when you grow to a point where like your time is more valuable than your money, you just think anything I can do to save myself an hour, give myself 5 hours back, I would be able to do this cool thing over here. You realize like, okay, it's time to build a team. And almost all of us do it too late. So like if you're thinking, am I ready? You're past ready. Like, and build a team. Yeah. Or start with one person, like obviously hire someone to help you with something so that you can focus more on the things that only you can do.
I love that. It's so true.
Yeah. It's fun being on this podcast because it's kind of like a reflection of where I've finally gotten in this journey. I've always been I don't have time. I don't have time to do public speaking. I don't have time to do podcasts. I just can't even find the hour. And that's one of many things on my list that I hope to create space for through having a team is to step back into my community locally and to be able to be available and present for all the cool things that other people are doing online and podcasts and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you. As a mother, what is one habit or hack or tip that you use to keep yourself on a plant-based diet?
Well, for me, it's easy at this point. Honestly, it was easy the second I closed the book of that I read so many years ago. I just always knew I would, but I know that one thing that makes it easier is community. And whether that's like a virtual community through the internet or a group that you meet up with once a month for a vegan potluck, or, a friend that you're like, please try this with me so I'm not alone. Like whatever it is, like having some form of community just makes life so much easier because it really does get lonely when it feels like nobody gets it. And even just having that one person or the one group makes a huge world of a difference. And then attitude, like having a good attitude. You can always look at things two ways, right? I mean, at simplest, glass half empty, glass half full, but like, oh, what am I going to eat? Or, what am I going to eat? Ooh, I could try something new. Ooh, what should we find at the grocery store? Like just shifting your attitude to like excitement and exploration rather than like dread and annoyance of like feeling limited. It just, that changes everything. And that's just in your brain. Like you just tell your brain to have a different attitude and sometimes it will listen to you. And then you've just changed your experience for the day.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
I would say misaligned and aligned. And misaligned, like not even, you know how a lot of times you have a out of alignment part of your body or something, you don't even notice it. You're like going through the day, you're like, oh, God, why don't I feel perfect? But something's there and you're not really sure what it is. And then suddenly you get back in alignment. You're like, wow, this feels good. Like that's what it feels like before and after. It's just, you didn't even know you were out of alignment. But then when you're in alignment, you're like, okay, I'm flying.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to follow you and support you on the web and social media in general?
Oh, thank you so much. You can find all the latest happenings at worldofvegan.com. It's our website. You can sign up to our e-newsletter there. And we send weekly emails with all the latest. On Instagram, we're just the handle vegan at vegan. And across other social media, you can find us at World of Vegan on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn now, all the places at World of Vegan. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Michelle, for being on Plant Your Seed. Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.